Now, the Three Martini Lunch with Greg Corombos and Jim Geraghty.
And welcome, everyone, to the Friday edition of the Three Martini Lunch, along with Jim Geraghty of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. We swear we're not trying. It's just the way the news is this week. Once again, crazy martinis. Jim, I'm sensing a pattern here.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody wants to dispute the characterization, they can, but come on, folks. This is crazy.
It certainly is. A good shout-out today. We'll do a quick shout-out to all the good folks at the March for Life in downtown Washington. There'll be tens of thousands, perhaps in the six figures of those marching for life. Hard to imagine a better cause than that, so we hope that the weather stays relatively nice for them today and that it's a good day for the movement. Let's go to our first crazy martini, and this really broke last night. And this is Buzzfeed. Buzzfeed is reporting via Michael Cohen and through unnamed sources, either with Bob Mueller or who are familiar with the Mueller probe, that President Trump specifically, personally directed Michael Cohen to lie to the United States Congress under oath in its investigation, specifically on the question of when the Trump Organization scrapped its Trump Tower Moscow plans. Under oath, Cohen said it happened in January. Turns out it actually happened in the summer of 2016. And Cohen is now saying that he was told by the president to lie. That's known as suborning perjury. Those of us who remember the Clinton investigation, that term was thrown around a lot, and a lot of us thought that was a pretty big deal back then. But the one thing that still needs to be investigated a little bit here, Jim, is the fact that this is coming from Buzzfeed, because Buzzfeed has a little bit of a history of going with stuff that might not have been fully vetted. In fact, that issue came up when Buzzfeed's Anthony Cormier, who worked on the story, was on CNN's New Day with Allison Camerata and John Berman. Camerata with the question.
Have you seen any of that other corroborating evidence?
No, I've not seen it personally, but the folks that we've talked to, the two officials that we've spoken to, are fully 100% read in to that aspect of the special counsel's investigation.
So, Jim, as a lot of people are putting in comma splices today, this is huge if true. And if there is all this corroborating evidence, then there could be really, really big trouble here. But BuzzFeed's got a questionable reputation, and that has to be factored in here, at least in the beginning of this story breaking.
Yeah, I mean, let's begin with if true, and this is if it's true, this is going to be in the Mueller report. We should know not too long. And you can almost feel all of Capitol Hill leaning forward in their desks and glancing in the direction of Robert Mueller and saying, Special counsel, is there anything you'd like to tell us these days? Looking at their watches, tapping their foot. It is, day 600 something. It's January 2019. You're investigating stuff that happened in 2016. You were set up middle of 2017. If this is true, we probably all. This is not the sort of thing you can dilly-dally about. And let me just observe that this was one of the things that was thrown against Nixon. This was the heart of the impeachment argument against Bill Clinton. Suborning perjury is a big deal. There's no way to say, everybody does this. I'm sure you'll see some Republicans saying, well, if they didn't remove Clinton from office, they shouldn't. No, come on. This is, You can only have one standard. You should only have one standard. And if the guy you like broke the law, he should face the consequences just like everybody else. But the best scenario for the Trump administration is if this story turns out to not be true. And there are a couple reasons to feel a little bit worried about this. Other reporters are saying they have not heard that members of the Trump organization have met with or been interviewed by Mueller. This doesn't mean it didn't happen. It just means that it's been really kept quiet. And that's the sort of thing that would be a really big deal, be kind of surprising for them to be able to keep that under wraps this long. Could it happen? Sure. BuzzFeed's reputation doesn't help. One of the reporters won a Pulitzer for investigative reporting. That's good. The other guy had botched stories about Karl Rove back during the Bush administration. That's not reassuring. Cormier's the good one. Leopold's the one who's had troubles in the past, if you're wondering which one is which. And again, hanging over this is BuzzFeed's decision to run the dossier when nobody else could verify it, and they themselves has admitted that they couldn't verify any of it. And a lot of folks would say, that's not journalism. That's rumor mongering. Like, clearly people were shopping this around. It means something if nobody else was running that dossier because it just seemed too sketchy, too unreliable, too outlandish, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's one other aspect that is kind of sticking in my craw, Greg, and I'll put this to you and kind of open up this question to the listeners. If you're the source who has seen these documents, right, and you've got it, you've seen it, and this is a huge deal. This is, ipso facto, right on the face of it, the sort of thing that leads to impeachment. Trump suborned perjury. Out of all the reporters in the whole wide world, out of all the reporters working this story in Washington, do you go to Buzzfeed?
No, not in the
right. I mean, there's a million reporters at the Post, New York Times, USA Today, AP. We've talked in the past about McClatchy's reporting about Cohen being in Prague that nobody else could verify. When one publication gets way out in front of the story and nobody else can verify it, that probably should be a red flag. Doesn't mean the story. Does this prove it's not true? No, we just don't know this yet. If true, it's a huge bombshell and probably means serious threat of impeachment for the Trump presidency. But until we see that, it remains an accusation, not a verified, series of facts.
Yeah, you meet Bob Woodward in a garage somewhere. Isn't that how this is supposed to work?
He never said follow the money, by the way. But my other thought the whole time, Greg, had been that Deep Throat all these years was, in fact, Hal Holbrook. The actor who played him in the movie All the President's Men. It would be the perfect disguise. But no, in fact, it turned out to be that guy with the FBI all those years ago. By the way, also, how do you feel like getting your source nickname from a porn film? You couldn't have gone with, the Shadow Nose or something like that. You couldn't have gone with something cool. No, I've got Linda Lovelace. Great, thanks.
I guess not. Although it's odd that there is also that element intertwined into this whole saga as well, isn't it?
It keeps coming up in these presidencies.
Yeah, amazing. All right. Well, Jim, let's move to our second crazy martini now. And this is courtesy of Free Beacon, but a lot of folks are reporting this. I think it started first in U.S. News. Pennsylvania Republican Congressman Tom Marino announced Thursday he would resign from Congress effective next week. Marino said he would be leaving Congress on January 23rd, just days into his fifth term. You're thinking, oh, big looming scandal, right? Nope, going to work in the private sector. Quote, having spent over 2 decades serving the public, I have chosen to take a position in the private sector where I can use both my legal and business experience to create jobs around the nation. He says, I want to thank the people of the 12th Congressional District of Pennsylvania for the faith they have placed in me to represent them in Congress, yada, yada, yada. Jim, this is one of those situations where he's inspired by Cliff Kingsbury, or what's going on here? That, this is a nice job. Oh, but there's another job over here I really want, which people do. It happens. Maybe something he's really wanted for a long time finally just opened up. But when you make a commitment to the people of your district or your state that, I'm in this for the next 2 years, which isn't the longest stretch of time. And then, 2 weeks into the new Congress? Yeah, that was great. See you later.
Yeah, I mean, when you quit this early, this fast, and this unexpectedly, fairly or not, people are going to say, is there more to this story? For perspective, Greg, am I remembering correctly that the new Congress gets sworn in on the 3rd of January?
Yes.
Okay. So this guy has barely served more than one Scaramucci. That's the 11-day period. It's a measurement of time used for an extremely short period of employment in the White House. I get if Tom Marino wants to go off and make money, I don't begrudge him that, but this just feels like the sort of thing you could have contemplated before running for re-election. This bizarre out of the blue. If he really is resigning that quickly, then they're either going to do a special election. I guess they do a special election. Your constituents are left without a congressman for, my guess is some period of months. But they probably do it. I'm trying to remember whether Pennsylvania has off-year elections for state offices. They could theoretically do it in something like that, but just seems out of the blue, weird, and kind of abandoning your constituents. Do you know what he did to his district, Greg?
What?
He ghosted them. Yeah, I'll see you later. Where's Marino? I mean, honestly, this is the most surprising retirement of a guy named Marino since Dan quit the Dolphins.
Oh, man. Well, it's understandable that when you're in the House minority, it's not a lot of fun. So I can see that. Maybe he thought he was going to get some cushy chairmanship or subcommittee chairmanship. And then So far, it looks like the next 2 years, at least in the House side, are going to be all about investigations and if we ever end the shutdown. So it's not the most mature place to be working these days. So it's understandable that it might not look all that attractive all of a sudden. But you did make a promise to your constituents. So definitely looks like you're getting out while the getting's good here.
Yeah, one of those things where, Congressman, what are your plans for the coming term? Nothing. See ya. Old Dennis Miller. Guess what, folks? That's the news, and I am out of here.
All right, let's move on to our final crazy martini now. And unfortunately, this didn't happen in time for us to talk about it on Thursday, but it's certainly worth talking about on Friday. We saw earlier in the week that Nancy Pelosi sent a letter to President Trump saying, look, with this shutdown, State of the Union's this major high security event, takes a lot of coordination, a lot of logistics. I don't think we've got the funding to do this unless the shutdown's over. So you either need to postpone this until after the shutdown or scrap the public speech on TV and just submit it in written form, which presidents did many times over the years in our republic. And so now we're in a limbo as to whether or not the State of the Union is still going to happen. The Secret Service fired back and said, yeah, actually, we can handle that even if there's still a shutdown. That's not really a problem. But President Trump wasn't going to leave it at that. Nancy Pelosi and other members of Congress were headed off on a congressional delegation to Brussels and ultimately Afghanistan. They were literally on the bus headed to Joint Base Andrews when this letter went out to the Honorable Nancy Pelosi. Dear Madam Speaker, due to the shutdown, I am sorry to inform you that your trip to Brussels, Egypt, and Afghanistan has been postponed. We will reschedule this 7-day excursion when the shutdown is over. In light of the 800,000 great American workers not receiving pay, I am sure you would agree that postponing this public relations event is totally appropriate. I also feel that during this period, it would be better if you were in Washington negotiating with me and joining the strong border security movement to end the shutdown. Obviously, if you would like to make your journey by flying commercial, that would certainly be your prerogative. I look forward to seeing you soon and even more forward to watching our open and dangerous southern border finally receive the attention, funding, and security it so desperately deserves. So the buses come back to Capitol Hill. Everyone on the bus is fuming. Now there's reports that Pelosi's still trying to do this by flying commercial. Jim, some people say this is epic level trolling. Pelosi can't out-troll the master and all this sort of stuff. How do you read it?
Yeah, so, and remember we were trying to end the government shutdown, Greg? Was that 2 years ago, 3 years ago? No, seriously, that we saw, he invited the Democrats to the White House, they said they're not going to go there. Last time they were there, Trump said bye-bye and gets up from the, hey, kind of hard to get to the solution when nobody's negotiating with each other or even sitting down or talking to each other. And I did not like Pelosi basically canceling the State of the Union. She didn't, outright say that theoretically. She said, oh, Trump, you can submit it in writing or we should postpone it. Look, the entire security explanation was nonsense. Everybody knew the explanation was nonsense. DHS, Secret Service, because here's the thing. If the U.S. Capitol would not be safe during the State of the Union because of government shutdown, Greg, how safe is it now?
Good question.
Right? I mean, theoretically, are they going to have more manpower? Sure. But in the end, the idea is that, not paying the Secret Service and U.S. Capitol Police and I assume FBI and all the other alphabet agencies that are involved in security for a major event like that. How good's the security now on a normal day? My suspicion is that if the security now, then presumably these guys are professionals. They could handle it there. Do I think it stinks that these guys are not getting paid? Absolutely. One of the reasons everyone should be trying to negotiate a settlement to get the government reopened. But Pelosi seemed to think, apparently, their staff was saying to the, without identifying themselves, to the Washington Post, this is meant as a jab at Trump. This is meant as disrespect. This is meant to make it sound like we're not treating him like he's a real president, et cetera, et cetera. This doesn't help anything, guys. And then, of course, what Trump does with the Codel. Well, you could ask a very fair question. Hey, if there's a government shutdown, what are you doing going on a Codel right now?
That's a fair question.
Yeah, you're not flipping around, hitting all those spots in 24 hours and coming right back. You're going to be out of town for, my guess is, 4 or 5 days minimum. And if Pelosi is one of the people who has to be at the table to negotiate to get this done, unless she totally trusts Steny Hoyer to take over the negotiations or something like that, maybe you shouldn't be doing that. Now, maybe the rest of the Congress can. It's, fewer votes you need for the to passage a bill to reopen the government or something like that. But generally, this probably isn't such a good idea. Now, is Trump being petty when he does this? Sure. But the other thing I'm kind of left baffled by, and it'll be interesting to see, if the Democratic strategy seemed to be, Trump had said in the Oval Office, I will take the mantle, I will take the blame for shutting down the government. And you could tell, Schumer's staring at the camera with a smile like it's an episode of The Office or something. And I'm sure Democrats are high-fiving. But in their miscalculation, a president normally doesn't want to get blamed for a shutdown. Trump is not a normal president. This doesn't really bother him. That it's going to give him bad press. He gets bad press every single day. There's been a little bit of a drop in his approval rating. I imagine this is a mild headache to him. But all in all, Trump is not going to surrender on this because he fears the consequences of not funding the wall a lot more than he fears getting blamed for a government shutdown. So everything that Pelosi and Schumer thought were leverage isn't really leverage. And that's where we are now, the longest government shutdown ever, and really no sign of progress in the future point. If you want to reopen the government, you got to throw them a bone on something. And the idea of letting this turn into a series of stunts, so like who can jab the other with an unexpected move day by day or something like this, Pelosi and Schumer are fighting on Trump's territory. This is what Trump is arguably best at, right? If you were really wise, you were Schumer and Pelosi, you do something where you offer a legislation, you give them a little bit of money now for the next 2 years, and most of the money comes after 2021, and you place your bet on having a Democratic president in 2021 who will be able to say, you know what, we've built enough wall, we're going to stop. That's how you pull a fast one on Trump. You give him the symbolic victory because Trump really wants those symbolic victories, and you take the policy victory. And that's apparently not something they're interested in doing. This is now turned into such a litmus test issue for each base of the party for both parties. I don't see how you get to it because it's a binary choice. Either you're funding the wall or you're not, or you're funding border security, a border fence, or you're not. And each side has said the alternative is unacceptable. So, sorry, federal workers. Everybody's trying. I'm trying. Everybody else is trying. But neither Pelosi nor Trump want to give an inch on this.
So many follow-ups I could go with here. There was one story in the Washington Post about how federal workers and their spouses are so used to spending basically an hour a day together, and now they're spending all day together, and they're driving each other crazy. That was one story. Secondly, on Trump and this letter, his capitalization pattern, I know we see it on Twitter all the time too, but I think he actually typed this himself because just the random capitalization of stuff just fascinates me, I guess.
I've periodically wondered if his father's original name was Drumpf. He was a German immigrant, and in German you capitalize the nouns. And I kind of wonder if that was a habit his father had and that he kind of absorbed from watching his father's writing or something like that.
Oh, that's
but you make that observation. Look, for a whole bunch of federal workers, this stinks. Yes, they're going to get paid eventually. Yes, even those who are furloughed and not working will get paid for this time. But for a whole bunch of them, look, they spend a lot of money at Christmas. Christmas bills are coming due. If your employer had said, "Hey, I'm going to give you a paycheck eventually," can't say when. You'll get paid. I want you to keep working, but there's no paycheck at the end of the week. You'll get one, maybe a week, 2 weeks, some pay period in the future. I'll get you all your back pay and make you whole. Look, a lot of people would have a very tough time like that. Now, I will point out, though, Greg, I do know a couple of federal workers who are, good with their money and have a decent amount in savings. And, Greg, this has basically been like a month-long paid vacation. They're going to museums. They're hanging out. This you can have a lot of fun with an unexpected month. If you've got the money to get through this, you're having a grand old time. But obviously, that's a fairly small minority of the currently furloughed federal workers.
Yeah, I know one person who works in payroll, and because payroll automatically comes out, they actually, even though they're furloughed, they had to go in and do payroll for $0 on everyone's checks. So that's how bureaucracy works. Talking about adding insult to injury. And finally, I don't know if you saw the McKay Coppins piece in the Atlantic today. Basically, both sides of Capitol Hill are saying neither side's budging. So unless we have a plane crash or some sort of terrorist attack or some other calamity here, neither side has any intention of budging anytime soon.
God, Greg, you need something better than just hope for a best-case scenario like that.
Jeez.
No, I don't mean that's a best-case scenario. That obviously is the worst-case scenario. But you're basically saying, short of a terrorist attack or major natural disaster, this is an ending. To paraphrase the Congresswoman's recent comments, they've done a 360, Greg. You end up right back where you started from.
Well, on that really optimistic note, Jim, we'll call time for today and this week on the 3 Martini Lunch. More winter weather this weekend. Yay. Jim, I know you'll be off for Martin Luther King Day. I will talk to you on Tuesday.
Yeah, snow permitting, Greg.
Jim Geraghty of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. Have a good weekend and tune in Monday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.